Community college students are continuing their studies from one semester to the next. The school has announced its highest retention rate in 4 years. John Wood officials say that rate stands at 76%. That's nearly 10% higher than the year before. The school attributes the success to several recent initiatives, one of those being the Campus Cares approach. The director of Pathways says it enhances a student's sense of belonging.
We know that a lot of the barriers that are in place for students is not education related. It could be transportation or housing or food insecurity. So we've centralized that support. And so I think when we start addressing those needs outside of the classroom, they're able to continue in the classroom.
And John Wood also saw nearly an 8% rise in enrollment from the fall to the current semester. Well, it's never too